Hey guys, it's Paul. So today I'm addressing some stuff that I see in comments all the time on plenty of Yu-Gi-Oh videos, my own, other people's, all over the internet. So that's like the prompt for every one of these videos, honestly. But anyway, fixing Yu-Gi-Oh is difficult. It's harder than you might think. So what do I mean by that? Yu-Gi-Oh is a very mature game, and as with most mature games, people have problems with it. People, of course, still play it. Plenty of people do, but everybody's got their complaints about Yu-Gi-Oh. The power creep, the long combos, the long turns, the big boards full of negates. Just all of that. People have a variety of thoughts about it, and people also have a variety of proposals with which to fix it. And so I hear a lot of these proposals. I think that they come from a very good place. So I don't want this to come across as me just bashing it, but I do want to provide, I guess, some perspective, or like a counter argument of sorts. Just, I don't know. Anyways, real quick, DZeef actually made a kind of similar video to this on his channel a while back. So I have watched the video. I had already sort of planned to talk about this myself, but I thought that he brought some really good points to the table. So if you want to go on his channel and watch that video, it would probably be a great compliment to this one. Anyways, okay. So first things first, a lot of people want, let's just start with one. Summoning sickness. Summoning sickness is something that I hear a lot about. So people basically want in Yu-Gi-Oh, when you summon a monster, maybe it can't attack the turn it's summoned, or it can't activate its effect the turn it's summoned. This is in the interests of, I guess, slowing the game down, so that both players get time to, make a turn. Or a similar thing, and the probably more prominent one, is special summon limits. So a lot of people want special summon limits to be a thing. Like you can only summon maybe, let's say, 5 times in a turn, like 5 special summons. These sound like decent solutions maybe on the surface, but there's a really big problem. I feel that when you implement something like a summoning limit, effectively you're going to get a bunch of decks that get a lot of value out of not summoning many times, and they will just sort of overtake the decks that need to special summon a lot. Obviously, a deck right now that people don't like is Dragon Link. It can summon loads and loads of monsters every turn, and there are several other decks that can do this as well. Dragon Link's just an easy example. If it could only summon 5 times in a turn, then yeah, that deck is halted and you've solved that one problem maybe. But then the power of a deck like, let's say, Subterra Guru Control, or, maybe Eldritch, or a deck like Altergeist. These decks that people typically don't like, True Draco's another one that comes to mind, everybody hates that deck. But these decks that people typically don't like because they are slow decks, trap decks, helmet decks, all these terms that people say. People don't like these decks largely because they slow the game down to a crawl and they get, a lot of value out of mostly trap cards or more stall, stun, control type cards. Nobody likes dealing with, Fossil Dyna or Barrier Statues or Inspector Border or all these cards. But the thing is, when the best decks in the game are completely, cut off at the neck because they can't summon a bunch, then it becomes immediately more attractive to play those types of decks. Now, if you want a format where that's what's going on, then sure, I guess you succeeded here, but there's a second problem. What about the lower tier decks that need more than 5 summons in a turn? So that's where I think about Blackwings, right? A deck that clearly doesn't really have any metagame impact right now, but definitely needs to make, a fair amount of monsters per turn to do something. Or a Devout Synchron deck, right? Just Synchrons. We're not talking about like the Broken Jet Synchron, Halki Fibrax, that thing got banned combo. I'm talking about just like if you want to play like a themed Yusei Fudo deck or like a Synchron deck. What do? Or maybe even a deck like Fabled, they recently got support. Or Wind Witches, they recently got support. What do those decks do when they don't have access to enough like they cannot legally summon enough times to actually make plays? But those aren't great decks. Most people would see those decks as just another, it's another low tier deck that really needs help So that's a bit of an issue. Another thing that comes up a lot that people want are, custom ban lists, custom formats. I know a few of these exist, and they're pretty popular. I have nothing against these formats. I think that for people who play them, they seem like a lot of fun. I think of stuff like GOAT format, which is technically really more of just, it was a real format at a time. And I know that there's like Trinity format, that's a thing that people play. But I've seen others, and I've seen people kind of bring up ideas of others. The issue that I see with that is, think about how Yu-Gi-Oh players on the internet argue and disagree about stuff. If I was to ask 10 different Yu-Gi-Oh players, what is the perfect ban list? What should be the next ban list? I would get 10 very different answers. If I was to ask you guys right now to leave like your, what's the next ban list, what should it be? You guys could leave that in the comments, and then people would reply and be like, what the heck, you're crazy. And then people would reply to that and be like, what the heck, you're crazy. What the heck, you're crazy. Think about it. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh players cannot agree on like what cards should be banned, limited, semi-limited, what should come off the list, what should go on. And so I feel that custom player-made formats have a lot of trouble taking off because not everybody agrees on what the acceptable power level for a deck is. Not everybody agrees on what the best way to hit a deck is. Do you hit its consistency cards? Do you hit its boss monsters? Do you hit this? Do you hit that? Do you put it to 1? Do you put it to 2? It's a tricky proposition, and it's kind of one of those things where it's at that point that I have the most appreciation for Konami, because while they don't do everything perfectly, I don't really trust any other Yu-Gi-Oh player to handle a ban list situation. I don't trust myself to. By the way, to be clear, I don't think I know any better than anybody else. I am not proposing what I think would be the perfect ban list, because I have not managed a card game for 20 years. I don't know, what goes into R&D, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I would do a better job. I don't think I would. The thing is, that's kind of where custom formats get really tricky. In the past, I've seen people try, groups even try like custom formats. I remember several years back, like ARG, I think was one of the companies, and I think PPG has also done this, where they try to kind of have their own custom format or ban list that they play because they're dissatisfied with the current format. But those events will I always notice they get like a lot less attendance, and people don't take the results as seriously because, it's not official Yu-Gi-Oh! So to get these different types of formats, they'd have to come from Konami. It would have to come down to Konami actually making these formats and supporting them. Because otherwise, people aren't going to really respect them. They're not going to be interested enough in them if a third party is the one in charge of it. And then, you end up with loads of like issues about trust. Like, are the people who are making these lists biased, or do they have like an agenda? They're trying to just increase the price of cards or sell something, or, like only benefit the players that they sponsor. I know that was like a big argument that came up with like PPG and ARG events and stuff, was like, oh, okay, well, they're sponsoring these players, they'll tell them the list early, or they'll like tell them what to play, or formulate it so that their decks are best. I'm not saying any of it happens, but I'm saying that these are valid concerns, and I can certainly see why it's just a bit of an issue. And I mean, even past all of that, just the simple overarching things like people wanting Yu-Gi-Oh to get rid of a certain mechanic, like Yu-Gi-Oh shouldn't have pendulums or it shouldn't have links. Obviously, that's really hard when you design a lot of monsters and effects around a certain summoning mechanic. So all those cards would also like not be good anymore. Sometimes people want Yu-Gi-Oh to have a bunch of like hard once per turns on every single effect. But, and DZ pointed this out in his video, there are a lot of older cards that become borderline useless if they get hard once per turns on their effects. Some of the really good examples he gave were like Volcanic Shell or Ronin Toten, that already aren't like seeing gazoodles of play or anything, but when you give their effects, hard once per turns, then you're just, these cards are now officially just not even useful at all. So you can't just give a blanket hard once per turn to everything. I guess the main point I'm trying to make here, because I know this sounds like a naysaying, Debbie Downing video, and it sort of is, it's just that fixing Yu-Gi-Oh is harder than you think, and I don't think that any one player or group of players is really well equipped enough to do a great job of it. it would ultimately have to come down to Konami's decision to do this stuff. And Konami, they're not, quick to make sweeping changes in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's probably for the best. They have a lot on the line here, there's a lot at stake. Making big sweeping changes oftentimes comes with a huge investment of time and resources and money. So, yeah. Now, I guess the happy ending here is if you have an alternative format in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you want to play with your friends or whatever, play it. I'm not saying don't play it, If you and your friend group want to like do a thing, or like your locals has agreed on rules for like a fun deck tournament or whatever, that's fine. It's just that in the big scheme of things, it's tough for that stuff to catch on because there's so many things. People aren't going to be trusting. People might, there's so much stuff that I've mentioned. So yeah, that's the video. I do want to know what you guys think though. Do you think that there are any solutions to fixing Yu-Gi-Oh! That come to mind for you that maybe feel more practical or realistic? And of these, what do you think maybe Konami would be most likely to get behind or help the community out with, if they ever even would? Alright, that's it for the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.